Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtatarasata Shishimati Divine Grace of Vaichanara Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Namo Vishnu Jai Vishnu Ganesh Madhya Pachar Purudakshmi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, Chapter 14, Pregnancy of Deity in the Evening, text number 33. Ditistu vriditatena Ditistu vriditatena Karma vadyena bharata Karma vadyena bharata Upasangamya viprashim Upasangamya viprashim Adhomukyabhyabhasata Adhomukyabhyabhasata Ditistu vriditatena Karma vadyena bharata Upasangamya viprarshim Adhomukyabhyabhasata Ditistu vriditatena Karma vadyena bharata Upasangamya viprarshim Adhomukyabhyabhasata Viditatena Karma Bhaktena Bharata Upasangamya viprashim Adhomukyabhyabhasata Ditistu vriditatena Karma vadyena Bharata Upasangamya viprashim Adhomukyabhyabhasata Ditistu vriditatena Karmabadhena bharata Upasangamya viprashim Adhomukyabhyabhasata Ditistu vriditatena Karmavadyena bharata Upasangamya viprashim Adhomukyabhyabhasata Word for word, Ditihi Diti, the wife of Kashyapa. Tu, but Vridita, ashamed. Tena, by that. Karma, act. Avadyena, faulty. Bharata, O son of the Bharata family. Upasangamya, going near to. Viprarishim, the Brahmana sage. Adamukhi, with her face lowered. Abhyabhashata, politely said. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, O son of the Bharata family, Diti after this went nearer to her husband, her face lowered because of her faulty action. She spoke as follows. Purport, when one is ashamed of an abominable action, one naturally becomes down-faced. Diti came to her senses after the abominable sexual intercourse with her husband. Such sexual intercourse is condemned as prostitution. In other words, sex life with one's wife is equal to prostitution if the regulations are not properly followed. Text 34. Ditiruvacha name garbham imam brahman bhutanam rishabho vadit rudra patirhi bhutanam yasya karavam amhasam. Translation, the beautiful Diti said, My dear Brahmana, kindly see that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva, the Lord of all living entities, because of the great offense I have committed against him. Purport, Diti was conscious of her offense and was anxious to be excused by Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva has two popular names, Rudra and Ashutosh. He is very prone to anger as well as quickly pacified. Diti knew that because of his being quickly angered, he might spoil the pregnancy she had so unlawfully achieved. But because he was also Ashutosh, he implored her Brahmana husband to help her in pacifying Lord Shiva, for her husband was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. In other words, Lord Shiva might have been angry with Diti because she obliged her husband to transgress the law, but he would not refuse her husband's prayer. Therefore, the application for excuse was submitted through her husband. She prayed to Lord Shiva as follows. Om Gyanatimurandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, so now, after having conceived of a child in the inappropriate time against her husband's wishes, of course, both parties here are at fault, Prabhupada says. But here Diti comes to her husband with a downed or face lowered, or Prabhupada says one naturally becomes down-faced after performing an abominable act. In the next verse, Prabhupada talks about how Diti now, she is trying to pacify Lord Shiva because her husband warned her already that, look, this is not the good time. Lord Shiva, although it may be your husband's, he may be your sister's husband, or in other words, your brother-in-law, still Lord Shiva is beyond this family conception that you have, because he's completely beyond the three modes. He's in his own tattva of himself. In fact, he's, as we mentioned last time, he's changeless, he's Sachidananda. He has all these glorified qualities. In fact, he's compared to Lord Vishnu, because from him comes the impregnation of the material universe with the jivas. So here, of course, Prabhupada and many devotees have also clarified that actually the difference between Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu is like that of milk and yogurt. So, although hearing all of this knowledge, although having, being taught this knowledge, the urge to perform activities of sense gratification overwhelmed both parties. Both parties. Not just one, both. So here Diti is now taking part, and she's coming towards Kashyapa to try and rectify the situation that has happened. Because you see, Diti wanted a son. She wanted to have children. And so therefore she rightfully went to her husband. But the time wasn't right. The situation wasn't right. So therefore she wants to rectify the mistake that she has done. And so in this purport, I thought, because we're going to be having the Mahacleaning today, I'll finish the class a bit earlier. So I just thought we'll just take this one point of how she was repentant of committing her offense. First of all, she was conscious of her offense. Prabhupada says first, we must become conscious before we can become Krishna conscious. In other words, we need to be aware of what we're doing. We need to have some knowledge of what we're doing. We can't be like, as Prabhupada says, people in material existence absorbed in material sense gratification are mad. Mad after sense gratification. What does that mean? It means that whatever little knowledge they have that's, somewhat logical or, general sense, that's thrown out of the window just for that sense gratification. They become mad after it. Whenever I hear this, they become mad after sense gratification. I always remember how my Guru Maharaj and many other disciples, they explain how during the peak of the distribution, especially during the concerts time, people would come to the concert, like George Harrison's concert or something like that, and the devotees would go there with Prabhupada's books, and they would distribute in the concert throughout the night. And it's mentioned that one particular devotee, he was saying that he went to the van, he picked up a box of Krishna book, and by the time he went to his book distribution spot to put it down, people were running at him with hands, Lakshmi in their hands, thrusting it in his face, trying to get Krishna books out of the box. So whenever I hear this, people become mad after sense gratification, I think people should become mad after Prabhupada's books like this. That is Krishna conscious. Because then if you see it in that perspective, then you can understand, yes, some madness is there. The attachment, the strong attachment, where one just gives up all sense of reasoning just to attain the object. That should be used for engaging in Krishna's service. But unfortunately, if we are completely absorbed in material existence, then we have no consciousness. We're not conscious of the situation. And what happens is that, as Bhagavad Gita mentions, that Dhyato Vishyan Pumsa, that 2 verses given in the 2nd chapter. As you go through that progression, what happens at the end? One falls down into the material pool. It's actually mentioned that Buddhi Nashto, one's intelligence becomes destroyed in this process. Then what happens? One falls down into material existence. And generally it's not until you suffer when you're falling down into material existence, then you come back to your senses and say, oh, actually, yeah, that was the problem, that was the mistake. But here Diti is conscious of her offense. You can understand her elevated state of consciousness. Knowing the problem is halfway to solving it. At least knowing that it's there, identifying the problem is halfway to solution. Because if you don't know this problem, where's the question of solution? So here Diti is very conscious of her offense and she's anxious to be excused by Lord Shiva. Why? You may think from a mundane perspective, look, she's got a son, now she's just trying to patch up, trying to arrange the situation so that everyone benefits here. Lord Shiva is pacified, I have a son, everything is okay. She's trying to materially patch up the solution. You can take it from that perspective, but you can also take it from the perspective that Diti, she wanted to rectify the situation by praying to Lord Shiva and to prevent her child from being destroyed or ruined, the pregnancy from being spoiled. So she's performing her natural dharma of being a mother, protecting her child. So you can see it from that perspective as well. But like I said, we're going back to this whole point of being conscious of one's offense, being repentant. Because this is a very important point Prabhupada mentions actually in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam. In the section where Ajamil, after he falls down from his Brahmanical stage of life, he ends up in bad association, and unfortunately he ends up, eating, sleeping, drinking, mating and defending to the nth degree, breaking all 4 regulative principles to the max, to the extent that he's, 50 years old, 60 years old, like at the fag end of his life, and he still has a son that's 1 or 2 years old. And he's so attached, like we see, how we have our leaders there in material society, they're just attached to their post. Until they die, they won't let go. Right? So the same way, Ajamil was attached to sense gratification. So then, at that time of death, when the Yamadutas came to pull him out of his body, then he chanted his son's name, Narayan. And at that time, Lord Narayan sent the Vishnudutas. And the Vishnudutas obviously, there was a conversation, they sent the Yamadutas away, they saved Ajamil. And then it's mentioned that Ajamil, after seeing this and hearing everything, he comes to his senses. And he starts thinking, what have I done? I was part of such a Brahminical family, everyone was dependent on me, my parents were dependent on me, my wife was dependent on me, I was, following the orders of my spiritual master, and then suddenly I just flipped, I went the opposite direction altogether. And so then Ajamil starts condemning himself. And one of the verses in here, Prabhupada says that this is the mentality of one who's becoming a pure devotee. The verse is 6th canto, 2nd chapter, text 27. Alas, all condemnation upon me. I acted so sinfully that I degraded my family tradition. Indeed, I gave up my chaste and beautiful young wife to have sexual intercourse with a fallen prostitute accustomed to drinking wine. All condemnation upon me. In this purport, Prabhupada's talking about how when one is elevated to the platform of devotional service, I read this, when one is elevated to the platform of devotional service by the grace of the Lord and the spiritual master, one first regrets his past sinful activities. This helps one advance in spiritual life. The Vishnu Dutas had given Ajamil the chance to become a pure devotee, and the duty of a pure devotee is to regret his past sinful activities in illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. Not only should one give up his past habits, but he must always regret his past sinful acts. This is the standard of pure devotion. Of course, if you read this whole section, Prabhupada talks more about this mood, this consciousness. Like later on in this section, Prabhupada talks about how Ajamil considered himself quite fallen and regretted his situation. Let's see if I can find it again. No, I can't find it now. Oh, wait. No, I can't find it. But anyway, Prabhupada says in this section that one should regret one's sinful reactions, one's sinful activities in the past. And we see that in the example of the past acharyas. Like, for example, Narottam Das Thakur, he prays, Hari Hari Bifale Janma Goinu. Manusa Janma Yar. Was it Manusa Janma Paya Radha Krishna Na Bhajiya. Janiya Shunya Vishaya Kainu. That this human form of life is such a rare opportunity and meant to be used to serve Radha and Krishna. But what has happened? I have wasted this opportunity, knowingly drunk poison. Prabhupada translates. I have knowingly drunk poison. Which is a very important thing to know. Devotees often mention also that Prabhupada loved to sing this bhajan. One place Prabhupada is saying to his disciples, Shrutikirti Prabhu, that Krishna consciousness is so wonderful. I can engage myself in Krishna service in so many ways. In the morning I can translate my books. If I've done that, then I can go and read my books. If I've done that, then I can go and I can, play mridanga for the Lord. After that, if I have time, then I can go and sing bhajan for the Lord. If I have time, I can also chant some more. So I'm always engaged in Krishna consciousness. It's so easy to be engaged in devotional service. Prabhupada's telling his disciple. So you can see Prabhupada used to take time. It's mentioned when he was living in the estate of John Lennon, when the devotees had established or trying to establish the London Yatra, UK Yatra. So then at that time Prabhupada stayed in that place. And it's mentioned devotees heard Prabhupada often singing bhajan. And he would sing this one regularly. Yamuna Mataji mentions that this is Prabhupada's, he would sing with great feeling. Because the devotees understand from what position, of course Prabhupada's a pure devotee, teaching us by example how to be. But we all know the past we've come from. And that was an impetus for us to take up to Krishna consciousness. Artha, Arthati, Jignasu, Gyani, Cha, Bharata, 4 kinds of people that take up devotional service. Pious people, that those who are in need of wealth, those who are distressed, the inquisitive and the, who am I missing? The inquisitive, need of wealth, Artha, Arthati, Jignasu, Gyani, the Gyani, or the one who is in knowledge. So these 4 pious people come to devotional service. And majority of the time, I remember one lecture my Guru Maharaj was mentioning, he was asking all the devotees, so what category does everyone fall under? Right? And when he was asking, then majority of the hands went up for distressed. And many people also, devotees had put their hands up for Gyani and all the others, and my Guru Maharaj was making fun of them that, are you sure it was just that, or was it was mixed distress also involved there? So we take up devotional service with that background. And once we take up devotional service by the mercy of the spiritual master, by the mercy of Krishna, then we should understand our fortunate position. Very fortunate position. Because in Kali Yuga, this is not meant to be. We are not meant to understand, from the gradual progression of Kali Yuga, we are not meant to get such wonderful transcendental process of self-realization. We're not unqualified to accept it. Rather, we're unqualified to find it. But somehow or other, Mahaprabhu has given us great mercy and we're accepting it by His mercy. And this wonderful understanding of we're not the body, we're the soul, we're servants of Krishna, we should engage in His service. And the best way to do it, because we're so foolish, we have a short lifespan, we're unintelligent, is to chant the holy names of the Lord, to engage in the Krishna Sankirtan. So Mahaprabhu has given us this. And you can see here, if you read this section of Ajamil's repentance, later on he actually says that, I'm a shameless cheater who has killed his Brahmanical culture. Indeed, I am sin personified. Where am I in the comparison to the all-auspicious chanting of the holy name of Lord Narayan? When one is in such a humble mood, when one is in such a meek position, naturally the Lord, being very compassionate upon the souls, bestows His mercy. And He knows that such a person understands their position, so therefore they won't be carried away by such blessings. You see, at the end of the 10th canto, the example of Lord Shiva's worship, or people who worship Lord Shiva, and then the devotees of Lord Krishna. In that section, Parikshit Maharaj asks Shukadev Goswami that how come, people are worshipping Lord Shiva and getting so much opulence so quickly, whereas the devotees of Lord Krishna, the owner, He's the proprietor of everything, they generally seem to be poverty-stricken. How come? So then Shukadev Goswami mentions that those who want material benedictions, they go to Lord Shiva. But those who want spiritual benedictions, they give up such material benedictions. They understand how insignificant it is, and they obtain spiritual opulences by engaging in the service of the Lord. So you can see here, this is the situation, that we have been given such an opportunity to engage in Radha Gopinath service. How does this mood of being conscious of our offense, being repentant, being regretful, how does this come into the picture without becoming, without any self, what is the word? Without being, ultimately depressed, being completely negative and going into the sort of a negative sort of mentality. You can see this in relation to Krishna consciousness, in relation to the Lord's service. You see, when we come before the Lord, we should always pray to the Lord that we may not become too familiar with devotees, too familiar with Him, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so the best way to do that is to show your gratitude. And the best way to bring about gratitude is to understand how fallen you were and how Krishna has come and brought you up to Krishna consciousness. You don't need to do anything. One lecture Radhesham Prabhu was saying, if you listen to the Guru Puja, Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu, Adama Janara Bandhu. We're all Adama. You don't need to think too much. If someone asks you, please write down in as many words as possible how you are a fallen soul. You don't need to think too much. You can write pages and pages and pages and pages. There's no need to think. So in that way, if we keep ourselves in that mood, that Supreme Personality of Godhead is the enjoyer. He is Rasaraj, and our duty is to engage in His service. And that we should come before the Lord that, I'm not able to come to this pure platform of pure devotional service. I'm constantly being harassed, and I'm constantly making the wrong choices in devotional service and satisfying my senses on the side. So therefore you come before the Lord in such a mood, and the Lord will naturally bestow upon you all blessings and mercy. This is how we use it in Krishna's service. But the first point is that we have to be conscious of what we're doing. Conscious means that we have to always be engaged in Krishna consciousness, chanting the holy name. Because here, how do we come to understand that? Because if you have a look I was thinking about it, if you have a look at it when you're living in the material world, what is the strongest way Maya keeps you there? She makes you see the other person. Although you may be going through difficulty, so much struggling, there's got to be something else other than this. Those thoughts will come to mind. People will get that, sudden epiphany. Wow, what's the point of living? What's the point of all of these things? This smashan vairagya, this cemetery enunciation. They'll get this point of, what is the point of living? Why are we, dedicating our whole lives for working so hard just for, meager sense gratification? People will come to this idea. But then how does Maya, completely wash them away from the shore? By showing them, see, the other person's enjoying. You just made a little mistake. Just adjust a little bit here and there, and you'll be enjoying like them. But what's happening to the people that Maya's pointing you towards? They're thinking, oh man, I'm not enjoying enough, it's not working out, and Maya's pointing to other people to them. You see them, they're enjoying. And this way, everyone's stuck in the cycle of material birth and death. Constantly going, victimized by the chain of sinful reactions and actions and reactions. So they have no idea of something higher. How did we come to understand what is higher? By the mercy of the devotees. By the mercy of the devotees, we got this understanding. Like for example, we're going to celebrate Gaur Purnima this Friday, in a couple of days' time. And it's mentioned at that time, people were just engaged, using the Vedas to engage in sense gratification to the best of their capacity, best of their ability. They were, performing marriage ceremonies between sons and daughters and everyone. And when all the family members were done, they were starting to marry cats and dogs and goats and things together. And celebrating in that way. And making a show of such Vedic pompous ceremonies. And the devotees seeing this, they're thinking, they've lost the plot. They've completely lost the plot. They're engaging their valuable human form of life. They're wasting it in performing such useless activities instead of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore what happened? By the mercy of Advaitacharya, by the mercy of Haridas Thakur, by the mercy of the devotees, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descended to rectify the situation by introducing this Nam Sankirtan process. And Prabhupada says in one of these purports, I'll just quickly mention this section and then we can wrap up. Here Prabhupada's explaining, this is the section where Ajamil is now talking about how the Vishnu Dutas have given him mercy. And how by a moment's attachment with the devotees, Ajamil was able to detach himself from the material conception of life with determination. Thus freed from all material attraction, he immediately started for Hardwar. In the same way, we also, gave up our sense gratification and come and make our way to Radha Gopinath's temple whenever we can. We engage in the process Srila Prabhupada has given us, following the 4 regulative principles of chanting minimum 16 rounds every day. And in this way we have such a wonderful opportunity to transcend the difficulties of material existence. So coming back to the verse and the purport, here Diti is understanding the situation. She's trying to rectify it. But how is she trying to rectify it? In a meek, repentant mood. That is the first step to any problem. So solving any problem. That is, one must come to a situation, consciously understand this is the situation. I could have been party to this mistake, to this problem. I could have contributed to this mistake. If we come with that sort of mood, of course, no problem cannot be solved. And especially with Krishna consciousness, it's a very crucial point, one who's meek and humble. Such a person in the association of devotees will naturally make great advancement. As Prabhupada is saying, it is required for one to immediately remember one's past sinful activities, and with that, that's a good impetus to never go back there again, never entertain such thoughts, and engage in Krishna's service. But then again, there's a word of caution. It's all such type of lamentation in Krishna consciousness engages one in Krishna's service more. Then we know that it's useful for Krishna consciousness. If such remembrance of previous sinful activities is causing us to become more and more depressed, then you can know for certain that it's not working properly. Give it up. Just engage in the positive activities of devotional service. Okay? So the point here, of course there's many things Prabhupada's talking here in the purports, but one of the things I wanted to bring out was this mood and mentality of being humble and repentant. And that's such a wonderful mood to have when we approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it protects us from becoming overly familiar with the Lord, overly familiar with the process, overly familiar with the devotees. And if we don't become so familiar, then we won't become complacent. We won't commit offenses. And if we don't commit offenses, immediately we'll be able to advance in Krishna consciousness and take Gopinath's shelter very easily and engage in his loving devotional service for his pleasure more and more. Because that is our goal of life. Our goal of life is to render service for Krishna's pleasure, for Gopinath's pleasure, to the extent that we completely become sold out servants to Radha Gopinath. Nothing for me, everything for them. That is pure devotional service. But at our current stage, at least I can speak for myself, there's always the desire, what's there for me? What is there for me? I'll do this, but what is there for me? That we naturally will overcome as we gradually progress in Krishna consciousness. And this mood of repentance is a great way of accelerating that. So I'll end here. We can take maybe one question. Yes, Prabhu. Okay, we'll just take one for now. Mm-hmm.
You seem to have said Kashyapa is also actually Paul. He may not be as advanced, spiritually advanced as Vidura has said in one of the earlier reports.
Mm-hmm.
But did he actually try his best? And at the very end as well, he prayed fervently to Lordships as well.
If you have a look at the previous purport, I'm just going with what Prabhupada says there. Prabhupada says in that purport actually, he himself was weak. Prabhupada says he himself was weak. So therefore, the nature of material existence is that you can't escape blame. You cannot escape blame in the material existence. You may be, like I once remember Rajanath Prabhu was giving one class and he was saying that the nature of material existence is such that when you don't deserve criticism and when you don't deserve glorification and it comes, we accept it. Yeah, it was me. And then he was saying that when you're criticized for doing something wrong, then you get so upset. But hey, actually you accepted the glorification when you don't deserve it, so therefore material existence works in that way. I remember one time I was in the car park, I was with another devotee, we were cleaning the car. And one devotee came up and they were very upset with the way class was given. They were saying, Prabhu, maybe you could have done like this, maybe done like that. And I had no recollection of giving class in the past week. And they were just, Prabhu, don't do this, don't say that, don't do this. And I was thinking, okay, Gopinath's giving me some, correction, I should just accept it. And so this devotee left, and I apologize, if I said anything, I'm sorry. And then they said, no, it's okay. I just thought in the future, if anyone feels like that, I said, no, that's great, thank you very much. And then they left. I was thinking, okay. And then I saw the other devotee washing the car. And he started smiling and he started laughing. I was like, hey, why are you laughing at me for? He said, actually, I was the one who gave class. And you watched me get there. So then, this is the understanding that in material existence, you can't escape blame. You may not have committed the act. It'll still come. Who knows, because of some past karma, some past activity. So therefore, we must learn to be equipoised and accept it as coming from Krishna. I love this purport Prabhupada gives in 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I think it's Vignamana. It's not coming the first word. Vikataśpraha. The one where Stitadir Muni comes. In the purport, Prabhupada talks about a Stitadir Muni. At the end of that purport, Prabhupada says that when happiness comes for the devotee, there are two things. One, they understand that they don't deserve it. And second, they thank the Lord for situation to be able to engage in service in that mood. And when distress comes, there are two things they think. One is that I deserve so much worse than this. And second, Krishna is so kind, he's reduced it. So if we work in that mentality, we can be known as samattvena. We can work in that equipoised position. Thinking of Krishna always. So anyway, that's the solution to the problem of always being blamed unwantingly. Yeah, but the point here is that Prabhupada already mentioned in the previous purport that he was also part of the whole incident. He was too weak. Prabhupada says in purport.
Does Lakshmi Devi ever get material opulence of an aspiring devotee, or did she simply get, hey, Durga Devi, I'm giving you a chance, so you're part of the... Does she ever get involved?
Does Lakshmi Devi ever get involved? That's a good...
But the point you mentioned earlier was,
Lord Shiva and Vishnu, their worship. Yeah, I don't have any recollection of how... I mean, before coming to Krishna consciousness, I used to always hear, if you want wealth, worship Lakshmi. Worship Lakshmi Devi. But from my understanding of Krishna consciousness, Lakshmi Devi, she gives spiritual wealth to those who want to worship Lord Krishna, and in her expansion as the material energy, she will facilitate people's material opulence. Okay? Alright, thank you very much. We'll end here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo.